Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. I hope that you guys are having a wonderful day out there. Hope you're having a nice start to your day, or maybe it's in the middle. Maybe it's somewhere near the end. Whatever time this video finds you, I hope that everything is going pretty nice, going pretty well. Today we're going to listen to Henri Dutilleux. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the name. And Henri Dutilleux. Perhaps. We're going to listen to this piece, Timbres, Espace, Movement. This is released in 1978. This is a piece of music that is inspired by the Starry Night, actually by Van Gogh. We're listening to this because it was suggested and sponsored by Randy. Randy, thank you so much for the recommendation. Thank you for the suggestion. I appreciate that. I'm really curious to hear how this sounds, because if it's inspired by that painting, you know, I'm expecting, of course, it to be kind of cosmic. I don't know if this is going to be leaning to something more experimental, something a little bit more, you know, obviously spacey as a sound, but or a descriptive. But who knows? They can kind of go in different directions. So I've never heard of Mr. Dutilleux, but we're going to go ahead and dive in right now. We will, as always, discuss it. It's playing. It started. When I full screened it, it started. Here we go. Love that little tune right there. Okay, lifting the ashes of the stars right there. I love that melody on the horns, clarinet and stuff when it plays there. That quick speeding up. Following that. It's like it just dropped into a vacuum. These plucked strings are almost like little raindrops, just falling, the melody falling into place. I like the marimba there. I love the marimba, how it's playing here, the atmosphere. And Glockenspiel. It's like it speeds to this intensity, it pushes on the gas pedal, and then immediately pulls it off. It always gets pulled back in. It's like the THX Sound effect in movie theaters. Interlude. It's a dramatic interlude. The sound of their harmonies sounds really unique. I wonder why that is. It's kind of... The little Celesta rise is really nice, really beautiful. Okay, so now our second movement, Constellations. That was really gorgeous. I love that interlude there. Fast little melody floating in again. Glittering melody. I like the harp celesta combination. Marimba coming back again. Timpani coming back. It's like the interlude again. That's a cool sound. It's like they're striking the violins with the bow, maybe? Violoncellos. That's cool. The rolling of all the drums there. This run sounds very proggy. Rushing of strings. It's like all these scattered pieces are coming together. Very expansive. That's it. This felt like a proper journey and an adventure of consciousness listening to this. Okay. Sometimes I need to kind of gather myself, recollect myself back together after listening. Okay. So can I bring something into this really quick before I go too far? In one of the recent videos we had done with a poem of ecstasy, I'm going to look for who said it. I got to look through the comments in that video really quick. But in this in the comments, someone said something, and I want to bring it into this. Here you go. Joe Rosenman, I got you. I'm pulling you into this real quick. Okay, when we listened to Poem of Ecstasy, Joe Rosenman said, here's a question. How do you suppose you would have reacted if the title was The Angry Seas or Attack of the Ghostly Shadows? My posit is the title prejudices the experience. Is that necessarily a bad thing? No, but blah, 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 blah. Okay, I like that question a lot. And I didn't answer it in the comments. I apologize. Sometimes I go through the comments and read them and I try to respond, but I don't always respond. You know, life. Okay. This is timbres, space, and movement. And clearly based off, like we said, Starry Night, 5 and Go. So, even though it's called timbres, space, and movement, I'm thinking of Starry Night. Because this is an instrumental piece with no other hints towards what the sound is or what the artist and the musician is trying to portray, besides the title. The title is the poetry, the soul of the work because it's instrumental. And this I would apply to pretty much any instrumental work. I'm imagining this in relation to Starry Night. I'm imagining this and comparing this in my mind, I would assume in the same way that that Henri did as well when he was inspired to make this via Starry Night. And so with that in mind, I think that the way that the music captures this kind of abstract and experimental amount of space, which, yes, space has, you know, there's a lot of space in there, but it's filled with stars, planets, galaxies, constellations, moving objects, etc., space shuttles, and every once in a while we run into these different objects, these different UFOs, or sometimes they're just IFOs, identified flying objects, and it's really cool what each source of this exploration brings to mind when it comes to sound. So in the first part here, I'm pulling up the Wikipedia article as well, because we heard, you know, at least 2 different movements, or saw 2 different movements, unless I'm mistaken on something. But the second was called Constellation. I'm trying to find the name of the first. I'm just trying to get some more information. Okay, so the first is actually called Nebules, or Nebula. I would imagine that's what it means. And so in the nebula of the music, the first part is very much more exciting before the interlude, because it goes through these different directions within this space, whether it's sweeping dramatics. You heard marimba and the celesta in there, and they kind of play what I said, these raindrop melodies that kind of creep in at different moments. They feel like the ashes of stars, the remnants of a nebula. It just feels like the skeleton of a dying star, you know, where there's still these little bits of light, like fireflies in the night, but it's not quite made whole. And so I get the same thing listening to this, especially in that first part. You get ideas, sketches of stars, sketches of that starry night, and even perhaps little splashes of color. But you don't get the full picture. And I think that that's a really cool way for Henri to approach in making this. Once again, it's called timbre, space, and movement. And that's what we're getting in this piece. We're getting a lot of timbre, we're getting a lot of space, and we're absolutely getting a lot of movements as everything moves in its own kinetic way through the piece of music. And I think that that's really cool. The first part almost plays, in some ways, parts of it play a little playful to me. It's like these stars are hiding from our eyes. And in a sense, it kind of stokes or invites a little bit of mystery to it, the same way that the painting invites wonder and perhaps a little bit of mystery in its color and its swirling. We should actually just pull up the painting while we're talking, huh? While we're looking at the swirling colors, and you can kind of imagine, like, let's just pretend with me for a moment that you and I are floating in space. We are floating in this painted sky. And we are swept up in the swirls of the oil. We're swept up in the whirlpools. We come this way. We go that way. We start back flowing. We hit an object. Boom. In the first movement, that's where these big dramatic moments and climaxes come in. We've hit an object. We've hit a star. Okay, now I'm kind of flowing against the flow of the art here. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, you flow in the spaces where there's little hints of things, but then eventually we find ourselves in an orbit of one of these stars, these planets, and then we kind of had that dramatic pop, and then we're back up into the slipstream of the drift. So I think that the piece does a really fantastic job of kind of capturing, in its own essence, the swirls and the strokes of the painting really, really well. Now, interestingly enough, what my favorite part of this was the interlude. I thought that the interlude was so beautifully minimalistic. I'm pulling it back up here really quick. And the sounds of those, the violoncellos here. The way that they harmonize with one another, I can't tell you exactly what it is, and maybe you can. There's something gorgeously, gorgeously mysterious about them. Like, I don't want to sound dramatic, but almost beautifully inhuman. It almost hits like a mellotron kind of sound, and I don't mean like literally it sounds like a mellotron, but it hits the same kind of, chord structure perhaps that a mellotron would if you're playing, chords on the mellotron or something like that. I don't know, there's just something about the way they sound. More in the beginning of the interlude. Like this. And a little pizzicato in there. I don't know. There's just something about that interlude that when it stops that first half and, of course, acts as an interlude and transitions and bridges us to the second half, it's just it's a cool difference from what we experienced in the first half there. And then we move on to the second half. It kind of has shadows and shades of the first part, but I would say that it expands upon a lot of these moments more. And throughout this piece, I think I mentioned it, but I really enjoyed like the glockenspiel and the marimba that were brought in, because I think those are just cool sounds to kind of include. The harp, they have these light touches in the music, as opposed to, in this case, a lot of the strings are playing, for the most part, in a little bit more of you have those looming under notes that are playing. Of course, they rise into higher cadences and such, but I think that was a really cool way to add a star to the night, I guess you could say. And Constellations gets a lot more progressive in its own way, which I think is really interesting. Let me pull you guys back up here as it moves through its different phases. And it's called Constellations, and we get many different ones, Some sound more actionable, some sound more laid back, and some sort of sound more dramatic. And then the ending melody, I don't know if I can find it. Oh, actually, really quickly, what do these symbols mean? I'm sure it's something very simple. It could just be like holding or muting the string so that there's no notes being played or anything like that. But I just saw that, and I was just curious what that symbol means, because I don't know sheet music or anything. Anyways, the ending, there was a run in here. See, feel like this is very actionable. Very proggy. Right there, the start of it. That's a very proggy melody. Almost hitting a King Crimson kind of through line there, which is kind of cool. But yeah, no, I think that this is a really cool piece, and perhaps it's, you know, I have the shuttle launch recently in my mind, but this would fit really well into like that kind of spacey sci-fi or sci non-fi kind of adventure, you know, or a liftoff, a takeoff of sorts. Okay, so work for orchestra composed by Henri Dutilleux in 1978. So he subtitled the work La Nuit Etoillee, in reference, of course, to the painting. The composer wanted to translate in his composition the almost cosmic whirling effect which the painting produces. Can I tell you? I didn't even read that when I was describing it, but we got that. He dedicated the work to the memory of Charles Munch and to the Tislav Rostropovich, the conductor of its premiere, who commissioned the work as well. It's approximately 20 minutes, of course, as we heard. He omitted violins and violas from his instrumentation. Their absence was meant to translate the impression of relative emptiness and immobility conveyed by the lower half of the painting. Very interesting. On the other hand, the wind instruments and percussions are particularly prominent. Yeah, especially the end with all the drums. Their solos represent the movements in the clouds and the light of the stars and the moon. Space is represented by an unusual distribution of the celli. They're placed at the foreground in a half circle at the conductor. The movement is symbolized by the alternation of static episodes and whirling solos, which we absolutely have. That's what I kind of mean when I talk about the emptiness and the space that's left in here, because it goes from different sounds in different parts of the painting, I guess you could say, back and forth in many different ways. This was a really cool piece to listen to. I enjoyed that a lot. Hey, Randy, thank you so much for the suggestion. Thank you so much for the support. Let me know what you guys thought of this as well in the comments. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for stopping by, whether it's your first time or subsequent. And I'll see you all later. Bye.